And let's get started. Do we have any new faces today? I didn't see any, but I might have missed some. I think I recognize everyone who's here. So let's go ahead and jump into the open RFCs. And we have a fair number to get through. So let's get cracking, I guess. First up is this Quercus Buildpack update. This has been quiet, as of 6 days ago, but it looks like a bunch of people have tuned back in, and this looks like it's ready to merge.
Yeah, just I guess last call for feedback, but I think we're all in agreement on merging this one. Probably do it later this week.
Sweet. Let's take a look at this next one, which is contributes RFC for Health Checker Build Pack.
I haven't done the count to see if we have enough votes, but we have 4, so I think we're got to be close if we don't. If there's anyone on the utilities team that hasn't looked and given it a thumbs up, please take a look. It's another one I'd like to probably try to merge this week.
Great. Let's get into one that has been recently reopened, or I guess re-unreviewed. This is the support for Yarnberry.
Yeah, so the rewritten RFC is what's there now. There are a few large changes. I think the one I'd most like to talk about here is the API change there. So I was wondering if it seemed reasonable to at least the rest of the node maintainers to change, instead of having node_modules as the actual keyword for like the provisions and the requirements across the Buildpack family. Since Yarnberry doesn't create node modules in some cases, it kind of felt strange to, I guess, state that the Buildpack provides it in all cases, like the specific keyword node modules. So I wondered if maybe changing that to node_packages made sense, if folks even cared about that. I think it would simplify things greatly as far as the detection logic across the Buildpacks, especially since I've merged the code paths from 2 Buildpacks to just the existing Yarn Buildpacks. I think it cleans things up really nicely. So if there isn't any opposition to that, then I'd suggest that going forward. I think the other large change here is that instead of foregoing the Yarn requirement, I've changed that to instead continue requiring the Yarn Buildpack or the Yarn dependency, just because the core pack path seemed, it didn't seem ideal for the context. Core pack is mainly concerned with managing package managers across projects, multiple projects on a local machine. So it in a container setting, if you're only working with one project, it kind of feels like we can just keep using Yarn Classic as the global orchestrator for Yarnberry installs within the project. This does present some issues that I've covered at the bottom of this document, in the rationale and alternative section, and also in unresolved questions. It does not seem that Berry plays well with offline builds. I've discussed it at length here, but basically there's no cache. There's no way to provide a cache to the build so that Yarn install could run successfully in an air-gapped environment. But yeah, those are the the two main changes. The rest are listed out here as well. So if there's any comments here now, welcome to hear them, but otherwise feel free to leave some comments on the PR.
The only request that I would make for this in the API section is if you would be willing to go through and just flag all of the build packs in at least Paketo that use the node modules requirement. So I would assume it's like probably this various start build packs and like run scripts and that sort of thing. If you could just go and flag those just so that we have like a definitive list inside of here, because we often use this to turn into an issue for action. That would be, I think I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable. I'll do that.
On the topic of offline support, I feel like offline could be a little bit of a misnomer sometimes. I feel like what we really mean is just like private network. Do we, in our existing Node.js build pack, support private registries in addition to the global NPM registry?
We do, yeah. I think that would largely be configured through the RC files.
Yeah, and then
if anything.
I feel like as long as that still works in this case, then we've sort of met the needs of most people. I feel like entirely offline is, not something that often works for the level of like language ecosystem modules. It's more about pointing at within a private network location to find them.
All right, that's fair.
I think it would still be something we have to call out though, because as the build pack stands now, there are ways to build in a completely non-network environment. Like
Is that like volume mounting a cache?
No, it's like you can like pre-vendor your modules and that sort of thing. Like
Yarn just used to support it out of the box. It just doesn't do that anymore because it assumes that you're going to be bundling your application source code with a local cache of your node modules. So like it kind of seems like you're out of luck if you're not using that philosophy, like the zero installs philosophy.
You have to forgive me if I'm like revealing lots of ignorance of Yarn in the process here. But if we wanted that to sort of work, could we do something similar to what we do with the Maven build pack, where you can volume mount your like M2 directory from your local machine and sort of use that cache? It's not like vendored into your repo per se, but in the case of some platforms like Pack, you can sort of inject that cache.
You could, I think you could do that. The location doesn't change, which is part of the problem. Like it can't be configured. So if you could somehow generate that, the problem is that if you were to try to generate a local global cache, if that makes any sense, so like a global cache outside of the container, it may contain things that aren't specific to the project in question. So if I have multiple Yarn projects on my local workstation and create a global cache, then I might volume out something that has things from other projects as well. So it might be tricky, but possible, I think.
We sort of let people do this to make things faster in the Java ecosystem. So if you mount your like local Maven cache to home M2 in the build container, then instead of the build pack making a layer that has that cache, it'll just see that that already exists and use it and not do any layerization of it.
Makes sense.
Be something that we could expand to other language ecosystem families in general, but I think there could be different complications for different language ecosystems, because I know like at least in Java, like whatever you get is going to be fine. The classes will be the right ones, no matter whether you're building for, in a slightly different environment from a stack perspective. I don't know how true that is when you're pulling down different versions of some of these other things.
Got you. Yeah.
in the interest of the number of RFCs we have to go through, I will say that y'all should take a look at this and leave any other feedback that you have on the RFC itself. Next up, we have the Dependency Management Rfc and its ilk.
I don't have any updates on these. We have a meeting set up for 4 o'clock Eastern time today. The details of the meeting are in the core dev channel in the Paketo Slack to discuss kind of like an alternative proposal that Dan had put together. And I think we're just kind of waiting to have that conversation before we, do anything more on the proposal that I put forward here. So nothing has changed in the last couple of weeks on these RFCs.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to skip over the next 3 phases then and go into the new feature checklist. I did a really small update for this. I basically just made a little flowchart at the bottom to kind of get a feel of what people, to see if this is like in the vein of what people wanted before I spend a bunch of time making a bunch of flowcharts of a bunch of potential user stuff. I just wanted to give people a taste. If people could take a look at this, say, yeah, this is like the kind of workflow diagram that I would like to see in order to make it so that people can understand what is a maintainer responsibility and what is just sort of general user responsibility. I love that. Just a little thumbs up. That's all the plugin I got to do for this. All right. Let's see here. Python dependencies. Joshua, are you here? And do you have any update on this?
Yeah, I appreciate the comments and feedback from Sophie and Rob on this one. I was distracted and didn't see yours at all, Sophie, so I apologize for that. So, and I just haven't had a chance to review them since yesterday, but I also appreciate Rob's comments on there. I do think that this RFC can be reworded to achieve layer reuse. So in some of these cases where we'll remove the Paketo hosted dependency, so the dependency isn't pre-compiled ahead of time, we'll just we can specify a default version in the Buildpack toml. So if someone tries to install something, they'll get that version. That version can then be cached as a layer. So if they try to reuse that, they can just pull up the layer again. And if they, for some reason, need new transitive dependencies of that thing, they can just clear their cache and make a new rebuild. So I like that approach, Rob. I haven't had a chance to, but I'll rework the RFC with that verbiage.
Sounds good. Let's keep rolling. So proposed add open telemetry support for Java.
This one is in pretty good shape, but there are a few things that we were just requested to kind of tidy up a bit. So hopefully maybe next week, just kind of waiting on the author to get back with a few additional changes.
Sounds great. By the way, Frankie, I realize you're having to jump from PR to PR. So if I am ever moving a little bit too fast, just let me know.
Still on the very fast typer, don't worry.
Next up, we have Rfc Publish Images to ECR.
I did just get done pushing a couple updates here, both to clarify that, to Frankie's point, we should only be using the new tags because it's a brand new location. So yay, no backwards compatibility problems. And then I also added a section clarifying our cloud provider strategy that I think should hopefully address some of the concerns from last week. I'm still proposing that we only do ECR for now, but that we're definitely open to doing other cloud providers and would be happy to do them given some vague criteria here about reasonable costs and requests from specific users. I think it's impossible to make the criteria specific enough that we could just decide on a case-by-case basis. But hopefully with these vague intentions, then we can create an RFC per cloud provider as it comes up.
I'll give this a read here in a little bit. All right. Okay, that's in a draft. Let's see. Amend RFC 38 to make Cyclone DX SBOMs reproducible. Frankie.
Yeah, this is new from last week. Can I nominate a note taker while I'm talking?
I can do it.
Cheers. Okay. Yes, this is new from last week. First thing is just like a process thing. I simply like this pull request modifies the existing RFC document instead of like having an entire separate document. That seemed reasonable for the change that I'm proposing. If that's not the way we want to do things, somebody just let me know and I'll change it. The meat of this is that per like this issue that we have on the RFC's repo about implementing SIFT and Cyclone DX SBOMs, we've learned that the Cyclone DX SBOMs that many Buildpacks are currently generating are not reproducible, meaning like 2 Buildpack builds that you would expect to go exactly the same end up producing different image SHAs, and that's because the bills of materials inside have things like timestamps and unique identifiers that are intended not to be reproducible. For Cyclone DX, the 2 fields that are causing this problem are optional. And so this RFC simply proposes removing them from the SBOMs that are output so that we still have something that's like spec compliant, but is also reproducible. You can see a lot more detail of like what the proposed changes in the RFC. For what it's worth, the Java Buildpacks are already doing exactly this.
All right. Are there any questions about that?
That behavior won't be configurable.
As written right now, no, but that's a fair thing to bring up.
Okay. Can't really imagine someone would specifically opt into not having reproducibility. So I think it's fine. Yeah.
I think someday if we can get the SBOMs out of the image into like an attestation or something nice like that, then this will be less of a problem and we can have all the everythings. But for now, this seems like a good compromise.
All right. I think that you're up next as well, Frankie.
Yeah.
With another SBOM related RFC.
Yeah, so this one is way more interesting in my opinion. The Cyclone DX one is just to take out 2 fields that are not required, whereas in SPDX, which is a different SBOM format that many Paketo Buildpacks are currently also attaching to images, SPDX requires in the spec a couple of fields that are sort of intended to be non-reproducible, a sort of GUID type thing and a timestamp. So in order to generate reproducible SPDX SBOMs, we have to get a little bit craftier to fill in those fields with reasonable values. So the RFC proposes that we do this, like replace the values that SIFT generates by default, and also proposes specific values that should be used in place of what comes with SIFT. Yeah, I would love feedback on particularly like the choices that I've made about what I think should go in those fields. Probably the more interesting one is we need to generate some sort of GUID, and I'm proposing that it be based on like the hash of the Go struct that represents an SBOM. Sift. You can learn more about how exactly that would work on the RFC. Any questions or comments right now?
All right. Thank you very much, Frankie. Let's get into the last two RFCs we have for today. Proposes to add APM tooling team and 8 new APM build packs. This already has 12 comments on it. So clearly it already has a good chunk of discussion. Dan, do you want to take away, do a little TLDR on this?
Sure. So there are a number of build packs that VMware had internally for working with APM tools. And we've kind of gone through a review with them, and they're wanting to open source those and contribute them to Paketo. The RFC kind of details like what they do at a generic level. I'm going to try to add some more details about the like detection criteria and things like that, so that there's a little more depth here. But yeah, generally it just it's kind of a proposal to add these build packs. And then the second part, which shouldn't be overshadowed, is that it's also proposing to create a new subteam for APM tools, because there would, I think, with the exception of these, or with the inclusion of these 8 build packs, there would be 11 APM related build packs total. And so like logically, it just kind of seems to make sense that we would want to have a team that owns that and has maintainers that are, affiliated with the various language families, since these build packs can all work with multiple language families.
My only question is it maybe worth us, you know what, this, I don't think this is a question necessarily for this RFC in particular, but it might be then worth us trying to talk to, New Relic, App Dynamics, Dynatrace, all of those people, and seeing if we can reach out and see how they feel about potentially having contributions or having rights to do contributions on those various build packs.
Yeah, I think it would be good to get them involved. It's possible that through VMware, I could try to reach out to some of them. Some of these build packs have been around for a while, so the folks that had originally worked with VMware to contribute from those companies may or may not still be presently working for those companies, but we could certainly do that to see if, or at least to let them know, what's happening and see if they're interested in contributing. That does raise a particular issue as well with the sub-team proposal and projects, in that our current governance structure really only allows permissions by team. And so essentially, if you were working on an APM build pack team, you'd have access to all of them. Where, if someone is contributing specifically for App Dynamics because they work there, we might only want them to have access to that particular one. And there isn't really a way to express that right now with the team structure and permission structure.
Sounds like we need another RFC where we can grant repo level maintainers. I feel like every repo should have, the team level maintainers too. I wouldn't want to sort of like have a single person or single point of failure on things that we're adopting. I feel like everyone who's in the broader team should feel comfortable maintaining all the repos in that team, but then we could have additional maintainers for specific repos where people have expertise.
Yeah, I think we had talked previously about, as getting off track a little, but about having a kind of delegation model where the sub team is allowed to make decisions like that about further delegating permissions.
I wonder if this could present some interesting marketing opportunities as well, depending on how excited some of these APMs are about publicizing that a new integration exists. Like, we can write a blog post and cross-post it to Paketo and Dynatrace blog, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't see, is David on today? No, I don't see him, but we had talked about doing a Paketo blog post. Obviously, once this clears RFC and we start doing the work, just to announce it. But yeah, that would be good as well to have some other visibility.
We could sort of be in other ecosystems. It could get folks who might not have known about Buildpacks to get a chance to look at it. But obviously, that would totally be dependent on how excited these different APMs are about participating in that.
Does anyone else have any pressing questions or comments on this RFC? All right, let's hop into the last RFC on the list, I think, which is this proposes to rename Buildpacks.
So I will prefix this by saying I fully expect this to have a lot of discussion. It's kind of it was an issue that kind of was raised up when I was going through the process with VMware to contribute the APM tools Buildpacks. So, we had to do a legal review, and the lawyer for VMware basically said that the naming convention that we proposed, which is our standard, Paketo XYZ Buildpack, is not the most compliant with some open source licenses as well as like third party, like commercial licenses, in that most of them don't like you to reuse their name, which is a trademark, and that the suggestion, very minor change, but is to basically use Paketo Buildpacks 4 and then XYZ technology instead. Seems kind of wild, but apparently this provides some more distinction between the fact that we are creating something that is not endorsed by this particular company and also is meant to work with that technology, not as in like we're trying to reuse that technology or something. So anyway, essentially this proposal is to try and make ourselves a bit more compliant. We've not had any actual pushback on any of this. It is really just essentially one lawyer's opinion as well. So, take that with a grain of salt. I do estimate that the work to do this would be fairly low. We're not talking about changing Buildpack IDs or anything that would cause breakage. It's really just updating things like documentation and the name, which is, for descriptive purposes in Buildpacks. I think where we'll probably see a little bit of breakage on our side is in like unit tests. There might be some tests where they are looking for a particular Buildpack name just to confirm that it ran or something like that. So we might have to do a few updates there, but I think generally it amounts to like a big search and replace effort, which shouldn't be like too difficult if we do, want to move forward with this and just try to improve our compliance standpoint. Hopefully that sums it up. Definitely comment.
And I'm assuming, based on the wording here, but this would apply to all the Buildpacks in the project, right?
The present proposal is to essentially do it for all Buildpacks. And my thought process there is that it could get confusing if we have two different naming kind of conventions. So it was just kind of for consistency, we would do it across all of them.
That's fair.
I think what I'm about to say, I think is not necessarily part of this RFC, but the mention of documentation makes me think that, first of all, I know that David had proposed that we have like a stronger style guide, or maybe he used a different word for the documentation, like guidance on how to write docs. Which in particular, I know can include things like, this is how you refer to the build pack. You need to say it this way and not this way. Right now, from my experience as like a website maintainer, it's very hard to maintain consistency in the way that we're referring to build packs. There's a lot of inconsistencies that as I find them, I try to straighten them out. So I think perhaps this RFC could be a good, if we decide to go in this direction, a good prompt to figure out something slightly better than what we currently do, which is maintainers finding and replacing when they notice inconsistencies.
It may also be good to call out that it might be a good time for us to check that we're making sure that we're representing the technology in the way that they have their style guide saying that we should represent them. I know that I recently went through and updated as many instances as .NET as I could to be how Microsoft styles it, to just make it more cohesive with their ecosystem. So it might be, worth going through and making sure that, all of the instances where we're talking about, Apache HTTPD or Nginx or whatever, that we're styling it the same way that Nginx and Apache do.
Seems in general like the right thing to do from a good citizenship perspective. It's probably a bit of a pain, but we should do it.
Yeah, I don't think I would propose any one particular person be tasked with sitting down and doing this, but there's enough repos where we can probably write a tool, to search and replace this stuff and submit PRs. And then it would be a matter of, reviewing PRs or something along those lines.
Well, Dan, I don't know that I'm hearing as much resounding pushback as I think you thought you were going to get.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll certainly leave it open for a while if anyone has thoughts.
Right.
Always appreciated.
Yeah. I know I sped through some of these RFCs because there is a big wall of them. We have a little bit more time before I say that we have to go into the next part of our sort of agenda. Does anyone want to review any particular RFC that felt got skipped over? Cool. Let's go ahead and move into the next part of our agenda then, which is Cmp updates and questions. Are there any large Cmp updates that we should be aware of? Anything along those lines?
Nothing major. Docker files is still the topic du jour on the Cmp side, and I don't think that we're ready to adopt it yet. But someday when we have UBI stacks, maybe that'll be our first extension, so we can use the runtimes that everyone in that community would like us to use. Seems like about it. I guess the other big topic that came up, actually, this is a good one, is about stack updates on the Cmp side. And what happens if I'm rebuilding an image that was built on one of the Bionic stacks with something that was rebuilt on Jammy? And there were some discussions of, should the Cmp lifecycle be aggressive about ensuring layers aren't reused, so you don't get a broken image? But I think after that whole conversation, Natalie was proposing this RFC, and she is feeling inclined to retract it and say that it's something that can be managed within Buildpack layer metadata, so Buildpacks can make those decisions. Because if you're too aggressive on the lifecycle side, then you end up doing really expensive things like causing another JRE to be downloaded in cases where it's not necessary. So I think it seems like the trade-off is going to be a little bit more work for Buildpack authors, but more performance for end users. So I think that is something that we should all be aware of, and maybe it might even be worthy of a top-level RFC to sort of describe our strategy for making sure that stack updates happen seamlessly.
It's fair.
Does anyone want to write that RFC?
I can. I was engaging with Natalie around this conversation already.
Great, okay.
All right. If there are no other updates or questions, then the last thing up is project updates. I only see one right there. It's one I added, which is that Go runs on Jammy. Just before this meeting, I cut Go 1.7, and that has full support for both Jammy and Jammy Tiny stacks. So you can whip out your Jammy base builder and Jammy Tiny builder and run Go apps to your heart's content.
I have a question on the state of Jammy at the moment. Do you think it's something where we might want to, or we are ready to do like a small demo at this point? I'm curious, as a Buildpacks author, how I can start testing that stuff to make sure it works and flushing out what other issues we might have. So I don't know if maybe next week a 5-minute demo or something, if anyone would be willing to do that.
I'm not entirely sure I know what a demo would consist of, other than building with one builder and then building with another builder.
Oh, I mean, if it is that simple, and then just switching them.
I mean, there might be more complexities for the actual application for switching from one stack to another, but fundamentally, when it comes to what we're doing, it's kind of just, yeah, you kind of run on one or run on the other builder.
Okay, so there are public builders published though.
The
and we can
easiest way to Dan, to do this is to use the Buildpack list builders, right? So you don't have to worry about them having. I'm not even sure. Have we published a tiny builder that actually has Buildpacks in it now that we've got Go done? Okay, we've not done that yet, but we have Buildpack list builders for tiny and base, so you can at least use either one of those and just do set it as your default builder or -- builder when you pack build. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are tiny Buildpack list builders. It's a mouthful. Okay, cool.
What are we thinking about in terms of rollout for something like base? Like we were saying, Tiny's kind of done because now it has Java and Go working, so we could probably release the whole thing. I think it could be cool to get versions of base as well, even if they don't have all the build packs the old one had, just so you could, start using it.
I'm all for, as they're rolling out and become compatible, just putting them in. Just realized that just put work on me and Frankie, but we'll figure that out.
What would you all prefer once we have done some testing within a language family to signify that we think we're ready to be included in the builder? Should we PR it or should we just reach out?
Yeah, PR with some smoke tests would be ideal.
Okay, cool.
All right. Well, we're coming up on 2:47, unless there, or Eastern time, I guess I should say, unless there are any other points of discussion or any other project updates. Go ahead and give you all some time back to your day.
Thanks, Forrest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. Bye-bye.